Hello and a very warm welcome to this focusIR Roundtable on mineral sands. My name is Sarah Lowther and I'm delighted to host today's panel, which will discuss what mineral sands are, what they're essential for, where they can be found, who the key players are within the sector, and how investors can get involved. I'm delighted to be joined by Ryan Long, Managing Director of Mining and Metals Research Corporation and the Junior Mining Insights newsletter, Dennis Edmonds, the Chief Executive of AIM-quoted Kazera Global, Oliver Hasler, the Chief Executive of Pix Resources, which is listed in London and Australia, and Sapan Ghai, Chief Commercial Officer of another dual-listed entity, Sovereign Metals. So, mineral sands, just what are they? What is the makeup of those elements? What do they contain? Sapan, you can start us off.
Sure, thanks for that, Sarah. Look, mineral sands, essentially, I think the sands bit in that nomenclature really talks to what they are. It is weathered rocks and minerals that have ended up mainly on beaches, on dunes, as sand does. That's where you find it. But essentially, they're made up of titanium-bearing minerals such as rutile, which is what we have at Sovereign Metals, ilmenite, which is a lower grade form of a titanium-bearing mineral, and usually you tend to find zircon in the mix as well. It's a bit of a investors usually find it a bit of a esoteric or an exotic part of the mining fraternity. But really, if you just think about it as a set of projects, assets around the world where the hard rock has already been crushed or ground to an extent where, you know, the likes of the companies on here, we're looking to basically just pick those sands up, separate out those more expensive minerals in there, and get those out to market. Funnily enough, they are called sands. At Sovereign Metals, what we have at the Kazera project in Malawi, we have the world's largest rutile deposit. It's not actually on a beach, funnily enough, which is why it had never been found up until now. Prospectors would look across the coastlines, but you know, Malawi is very flat. These minerals had nowhere to go, so they've just been sat there waiting for someone to find them. But we can go into the more detail on those.
Okay, so thank you for that, Sapan. But you know, sand is everywhere. You've just told us that's where you are. It's not necessarily on the coastline. So if it's everywhere, Ryan, you know, why has there been a disruption to supply recently if it's so naturally abundant?
Well, I think sort of in the concentrations required to make an economic mine, it's not as common as beach sand, to say the least. You know, that it's much more rare to find large concentrations of these deposits that can actually be mined. In terms of supply disruption, that's affected the mineral sands industry. We've recently seen the closure of the Kwale mine in Kenya. That was expected the end of this year. However, Base Resources, who's the operator of that mine, said they were examining the potential to extend the mine's life by bringing on additional operations at the Kwale North Dune and also the Kwale East exploration area. Unfortunately, both those areas lacked the grade and the scale to actually make it worthwhile to mine them. So Base has recently announced that that mining activity is going to cease to continue at the end of this year. We've also seen Sierra Rutile recently suspend operations at its Area 1 mine, which is in Sierra Leone. And then that's after the government sought to change the terms of its mining agreement. To give you some context, Kwale produced around 300,000 tonnes of ilmenite, 70,000 tonnes of rutile, and 25,000 tonnes of zircon last year. And Area 1 produces between 100,000 tonnes and 140,000 tonnes of rutile a year. So these are significant operations. We've also seen recently that Rio Tinto may face legal action over polluted waterways at its ilmenite mine in Madagascar. So we've seen all three sort of potential supply disruptions. We've seen government issues, we've seen environmental issues, but we've also seen mines coming towards the end of their lives. This is something we'll probably continue to see across these three sectors going forward for the mineral sands industry.
Okay, so grade and scale. So, Dennis, do you believe that what you have in South Africa has the grade and you've got the scale in the project you're involved with?
Yeah, we're in a fantastic place. The scale is fairly small, but the grades are incredibly high. So what that means is that whilst we've got a relatively small beach area, it's in what is called a sea base. So it's the letter C. And you can imagine as the heavy mineral sands get washed up the coast by the tides, the action of the winds is then driving in the currents. The actual action of the wind and the tides will then pushes it onto the beach. So it's a relatively small resource, but it's a constantly replenishing resource, which is fairly unusual. And it's very high quality. It's very dense in its mineral sands. So from our perspective, it's very exciting. But it's exactly as Ryan says. It's a question of enough deposit to make it economically worthwhile, and ours definitely is.
And Oliver, is your resource constantly replenishing as well? How rare is the project you're involved with?
I guess we also have a very rare project, the same as Sapan and Denis's. We're a high-concentration zircon mine with byproducts of ilmenite and rutile. So compared to most of the projects of our peers in the world, it's not an ilmenite mining company, it's a zircon mining company. And also, it's at the riverbed around the Kahayan River in central Kalimantan. So the timing was perfect, as Ryan mentioned. I mean, not only is there a lack of supply today, perhaps a little bit unexpected because of things, but it has been predicted by the industry for a very long time. It was delayed by COVID for 1 year, but we saw a huge increase in prices in 2021. We know that the largest mines in the world, both in Western Australia from Iluka and Richard Bay from Rio Tinto, are reaching the end of their mine life. So the market, and I've always been very bullish on the market, has been going up even after the crash of most of the metals and minerals. Zircon prices remained high in 2020, were constant for the last 18 months, have had a very slight fall over the last couple of months, but are growing again because of China's demand. So it is a very strong category of products.
Okay, so Oliver, you're in Indonesia, the rest are in Southeast Africa and South Africa, but is it the same customer pool, Oliver? Who are the customers that are eyeing up what you're extracting?
The biggest market is China, who consumes 60% of the zircon in the world based on the applications. And I guess it's an important point. Applications, the highest one are ceramics industry, foundry, pigmentation, refractory, and now high-tech applications, which makes the category very interesting. Most of the developing countries in the world have declared zircon, ilmenite, and rutile as a critical mineral required towards the transition to carbon zero, which makes it a very interesting category of products. So most of our products, depending on the world economy, and they have been shifting over the years. When we started the project in 2020, we were mainly selling into Europe. In 2021, with the COVID crisis, we shifted into China. Last year, with the economy, we continued to sell into China, but grew into India. So we have made sure to have a big portfolio of customers to be able to move according to geopolitics. But the biggest market remains to be China.
Okay, we'll come on to politics later. So, Dennis, is it the same customer pool who's knocking on your door?
Yeah, it largely is. Our major product is ilmenite rather than zircon or rutile, although we do have a certain amount of both of those. But the major interest is certainly from China, and we have a lot of interest from India, from a specific off-taker at the moment as well. But there is also development in South Africa. A company has been set up there to beneficiate heavy mineral sands. So there is a possibility that might actually be an end user, which would be rather interesting. and good for South Africa.
Excellent. Right. So what is good for the locations that you are currently involved with? So, Sapan, let's talk about extraction, because there is environmental concerns about strip mining of large areas. How do you mitigate against potential damage? How do you prepare for environmental protection? After extraction, what is left behind?
Yeah, we get question there. It's the question that needs to be at the forefront of any mining corporate. We're very lucky in the sense that what we found covers 200 square kilometers of ground, and that's actual mineralized resource. What it means is whenever we look at our plans of mining that huge resource, we can leave buffer zones around anywhere that's has high social density. It's a bit sensitive to the local population. There aren't any environmental issues around what we have, but if there were, we'd have enough of a buffer zone. And when I'm to say buffer zone, I'm talking, half a kilometer away. We don't even need to go to those areas on the ground. And having done that as part of our pre-feasibility study, we actually used exactly that methodology. We ended up mining only 30% of the resource over a 25-year period. So there's still, after 25 years of mining Kazera, you would still have 70% of the resource in the ground. So it just gives you an idea of just how huge this deposit is. But look, in terms of our strategy, we have two minerals within our project. We have the rutile that occurs at about 1%, and we have graphite, which occurs at about 1%. The easiest way to think about it is these minerals are completely liberated. They're not chemically joined within any kind of rock formation. Is we took a ton of this material out. We're taking the rutile out. We're taking the graphite out, and that 98% of material that we mined out but we don't need and won't be selling, we just put back where it was before. And we will be doing what's known as progressive rehabilitation. So we mine an area, after about 5 or 6 years, we'd return that back to how it was previously, including the topsoil, whether it was agricultural land or anything like that. It would look as if we weren't there.
Okay, so Oliver and Dennis, the same question to you. Oliver first. Progressive rehabilitation, is this factored into your business model?
We fill in the previous mining area, so we deliver the mine in exactly the same conditions like we took it, and it is. And we just finished this exercise at the end of last year, giving back the first part of mine by the government. But the beauty of this process, like we mentioned, it at the end is we're mining sand, so it's a gravitational process. It doesn't use any chemicals. At the end, we use trommel barrels, jigs, and spirals to separate it. We increase the concentration of our products in a mineral separation plant, but again, it's shaking tables, dryers, and electric and static separation. So it's an environmental friendly process that creates very little damage, doesn't pollute through chemicals, and at the end, we have the obligation to return the tenement in exactly the same conditions we took them over.
And Dennis, is that important to you as well?
I think Oliver's point is very important there. There are no chemicals involved. The separation is either a mechanical process or perhaps magnetic, but there are no chemicals. Our case is even easier. As I said, our beach is constantly replenishing. So as we dig out, exactly as when you were on holiday, sitting on the beach playing with the kids, when you build a sandcastle or dig a hole, it doesn't take very long before that's disappeared. And as we've all had disappointed kids coming back the next day to find that hole or that sandcastle they built the previous day, it has disappeared. It happens pretty much the same way. So what we do is we remove the silica sand from the heavy mineral sands. We also remove, obviously, the diamonds because we were mining in a diamond area. remove the diamonds and the heavy mineral sand or the rocks, and those there just get put back onto the beach, into this tidal zone, and are automatically just spread out again, as indeed are new heavy mineral sands deposited. So it's very easy for us.
Sarah, just point after Dennis's and Sapan's intervention. I mean, the beauty about this category is also the investors that it attracts. We have investors that are looking for mining, for commodities, for mineral sands. But if you look at our processes, it's also ideal for people with are ESG conscious. So on one side, it's our way of mining. Second is the applications, which makes it so interesting. I mean, the fastest growing applications for zircon, but also ilmenite and rutile, are semiconductors, batteries for electric vehicles, energy cells, etc. So it is an incredibly important category in all developing countries to guarantee the transition to carbon zero. So I think it's a very interesting category of investment from many perspectives.
And you preempted the question that I was going to ask Ryan, because I was going to say, Ryan, in the conversations that you have with investors and stakeholders, are they saying to you that the higher the ESG credentials, the more likely they are to get involved with your company?
I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, it's reducing one of those extra barriers to an investor entering a business and investing in that business. I think the mining industry has a curious role ahead of it going forward as both the saint, producing the minerals that are required for the energy transition, but it's also currently the sinner in terms of its environmental credibilities. So it needs to improve how mines operate, improve their ESG credentials, and fundamentally change the way investors perceive the sector.
I think just adding to that point as well, it's not just investors now. You really need to look at the full supply chain, the full value chain, and start seeing how your industries are thinking about decarbonization, net zero, and there may be the cynics among us who think climate change, is it happening, etc., etc. Well, the reality of the situation is this: it's at the top of the pyramid. You have the regulators, you have the policymakers who are already putting carbon taxes on your industry blue chip leaders. Your Boeing, your Airbuses, your BMWs, whoever. Especially Europe, Europe seems to be always in the pole position of these changes. So I am expecting that the US and other parts of the world will follow suit. But when your blue chip customer as a global miner is saying we need to reduce the carbon footprint of our supply chain, and then you see the likes of, for example, Rio Tinto, who is a 15% investor in our project, they're willing to spend $5-6 billion over the next 3 or 4 years on decarbonization. You get to understand that those policies that are driven at the top do slow down all the way to the miners. So yes, for the investor community, mineral sands is a very environmentally friendly way of doing business. But within ourselves, we are quite a decent part of the supply chain for the end users who want to decarbonize their own product.
Okay. So I'm interested, we're just going to return back to some of the corporate specifics, because we've got the environmentalists on board. At least you've convinced me from what you've been saying about the preservation of areas of outstanding natural beauty, etc. But what about the local government, the local communities? Talk to me about the engagement and the stakeholder relationships. Because that's something, Dennis, that you've worked very hard on.
It is. We're in a very isolated part of South Africa. So we're in the very top northern west coast, right underneath the Namibian border. It's an area roughly 850 kilometers away from Cape Town. And it's a very isolated community. You have very little support from anybody, and very few job opportunities. So what we are doing, both in our diamond mining and in the mineral sands operations, is creating jobs and working actively with local people to get them involved and to get them as part of it. South Africa has a policy of having to share shares with people who were previously disadvantaged, which is a mixed blessing in terms of making sure that the value of that gets to the people who really should be getting it. But we work closely with the local community. We've got some brilliant support from local people, so we've been incredibly lucky. And our manager in South Africa has lived there all his life, and so he is well known in the area, well trusted in the area, and we get fantastic support. So we're very happy.
Okay, I think it's probably a little bit more than luck, but down to extreme hard work and taking your time as well. Oliver, are you enjoying the same familiarity that Dennis has just described with his project?
Absolutely. We have worked very hard to establish ourselves in the local community. We're the only industrial group, the only group that industrially mines for mineral sands, and we made sure to operate at international levels. So we're operating at a total different level that the local communities are used to. We employ 99% of our group employees are Indonesians. 47% of our employees are Dayaks, which is the local community. We hire 28% of our employees are female, which is much higher than the average of all the listed mineral sands companies. So we have made sure also that all of our social projects affect directly the local community in which we work, may it be health for our employees or for the school children, investments in the local schools to improve their conditions, or things like blood donations that have never been done in Central Kalimantan. So we're well liked by the local government, which sees in us exactly the goals that Indonesia is looking for to progress. And as you know, we find the resources because Indonesia is a very big mining country for other minerals, for nickel bauxite and others.
And Sapan, I know that social is very much part of the DNA of sovereign metals.
That's right. Yeah, we've been very lucky in that we've managed to secure a social team for sovereign metals that used to work for Quantum over the border in Zambia, where they've built huge copper mines, both at Sentinel and Kansanshi. That whole team now works for sovereign metals, and one of the first initiatives they undertook in Malawi was this conservation farming initiative. We've taken 90 farmers, local farmers, who would be or are on the project area, and we've just essentially upgraded their farming technique, taught them, trained them in terms of new knuckle cutting egg greening farming. And we've started looking at the yields already. Harvest is yet to come, but it looks like we've probably tripled the yields on their annual crops, which, for a country which is absolutely dependent on the farming, 60% of the population get most of their nutrition from the farmers. It's great work. I'm hoping that it continues to roll it out to a lot more individual project area.
Okay, so it sounds as though the three of you are setting the gold standard in so many aspects: environmental, the social. Before we start to talk about how far advanced you are within your projects, Ryan, I'm just wondering how mature an industry, a sector, is the mineral sands, rare earth element sector. Australia's been referencing it since the late 1960s. I'm not sure how many practitioners are out there, but what is the potential size of the sector? Are investors getting in relatively early days for the mineral sands?
I think it's fair to say mineral sands is a fairly mature industry. I don't think anyone would consider it an emerging metal like something like lithium or something like that. The global market for ilmenite alone in 2023 was around 11.5 billion, and that's forecast to grow a compound annual growth rate of around 3.1%, reaching 14.6 billion by 2031. The rutile market was valued at around 4 billion in 2023, and that's going to grow a bit faster. That's forecast to grow around 5%, reaching around 6 billion by 2032. And then the zircon market, which is the smallest of all the mineral sands products, that's actually valued at just around 2 billion in 2023. So it's still a substantial market. And that's forecast to go around 7%, reaching 3.5 billion by 2032. So these are all big markets, and they're all forecast to grow much larger. So it's a mature, well-established mining market that's poised to do well.
Very good. Right, Sapan, words of wisdom from Ryan there. It's a market that's poised to do well. Is your business poised to grow?
Nothing but grow. I mean, look, where are we in terms of our project? So what we found was a complete greenfields discovery. It was a bit serendipitous that we found Kazera back in 2019. We were actually looking for graphite in Malawi. Every time we processed some of the graphite, we'd end up with titanium in the waste. Started asking, well, why is titanium occurring there? Because, as I said before, usually find it on beaches. So then we asked the question, well, what form does this titanium take? Because, either going to be ilmenite or rutile, just because of the metamorphosed deep sand type deposits it is. Ilmenite would have been nice, 30 to 60% titanium dioxide sells for a good price for $350 a ton these days. Rutile would have been a jackpot, right? So 95% TiO2 sells in the market for up to $2,000 a ton. And turns out it was rutile. And of course, the graphite continued alongside it, contiguous with the rutile. But then what we did was try and figure out how much of it do we have. Well, first we took a commodity traders approach, dare I say a Glencore style approach, which was, we've got all this rutile in the ground, but is it a saleable product? Because we need your product to be usable by the customers. So what we did was send it off to labs, to potential end users. Everyone came back saying this is good stuff. So what we did after that was essentially try and find how much of it we had, and we're still doing that. We're still drilling in northern and southern extensions, but as of today, we have more rutile than anyone's ever found in a rutile dominant deposit, or even comes off from ilmenite deposits as a byproduct. So we've got 18 million tons of the stuff on a JORC basis, still open in all directions, including at depth. Where are we today? We've done a PFS on the project, which would show we would be the largest supplier of rutile. We did a lowest cost producer, same for the graphite, largest producer of graphite, lowest cost producer of graphite. We'd be the lowest CO2 emissions in both those minerals. We had Rio Tinto take a 15% stake in the listed company, and they're helping us essentially take what was a PFS of sovereign metals as a small ASX A-listed mining explorer essentially, and what we should look like, given that we've now got this tier 1 deposit on our hands, and what it should look like if you put a Rio Tinto lens over it.
So Dennis, Sapan mentioned that glorious word, serendipity. Has your company been enjoying any serendipitous episodes which has taken your company on a different direction to the one that it was initially founded upon?
Yeah, I can't really say that. No, we started off mining diamonds. We were aware of the heavy mineral sands. There were diamonds in the area, and what we had to do was to get rights to mine both of those products because they were intermingled. You can't mine heavy mineral sands without removing the diamonds from them. You're not allowed to touch the diamonds, obviously, without a right to mine them. Diamond miners don't want to touch heavy mineral sands because they are very heavy. They are difficult to process compared to ordinary sand. So it was sort of, you either had to have both or you could have neither. So we had to have both. which means that we have a part of our waste product is diamonds, which is not such a bad waste product over.
And Oliver, do you have any glorious waste products?
We have glorious waste products, but we expected to have them from the beginning. We started with a zircon license. We have a very high concentration of zircon. It's the fourth largest zircon mine by Zircon Resources with 10.5 million tons in the York report. And as we said from the beginning, we have worked very hard to increasing volume. Last year we increased again by 24%, so we are in production. We were profitable in the third year of operation, having 2 years of COVID in between. And then, as we said, we lobbied very hard with the Indonesian government to get the license of ilmenite and rutile. They changed the regulation in the country, and we did our first export of ilmenite last month, and we're loading our first shipment of high concentration monoxide to sell to China, and as you know, that contains rare earth. So we have diversified or complemented our product range as expected at the beginning of the project, which can only increase our productivity because we have been absorbing all of our costs within zircon. So this is high profit margin byproducts.
It's a good time to invest, isn't it, Oliver? I mean, yesterday here in the UK, FTSE 100 making a new record high. There's a reinvigoration in the junior markets. I mean, there has been scaremongering with lots of companies are delisting, but it's sort of a natural selection that I'm sensing that now is a superb time to be investing. Do you think that you've got fair value in your stock, or there's much more upside to come?
I think it's a very good moment to invest, as you say. On one side, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm very bullish about the category. As Dennis and Sapan mentioned, if you look into the future, you add all the new projects that are coming along and assume that they will start on time with the volumes predicted, which rarely happens. They're not enough to compensate for the mines that are reaching the end of their mine life in Western Australia and in South Africa, while the industry, as Ryan mentioned, is growing at a very strong pace. So there can only continue to be pressure on prices going up. At the same time, based on everything that's happening in the world, our share price, together with most of the share prices of mining companies, is very low, far away from fair value. So I think it's a superb opportunity to invest in mineral sands, and in particular in our project of Peaks Resources.
Yeah, and Dennis, I know that in a recent investor update, you said the board believes that 2024 is set to be the year in which Kazera starts to really hit its stride. Is this still the case?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been building, with obtaining licenses, doing testing, building a plant, putting the whole thing together, and then the next couple of months we will be in production, both on diamonds and heavy mineral sands. So it would seem to me to be the perfect time to be investing in Kazera. It's got everything's going to be turned around this year. We're going to go from a company with a bit of land and some ideas into a company producing products and making substantial profit. Yeah, it's going to be a great year.
It's going to be a great year. So, Sapan, I'm just wondering how busy it's going to be for you in 2024, and whether you're going to be too busy to be a member of our forums going forward, because there's just so much to do.
There is. Look, we benefit from this whole kind of 2-for-1 that we have with Kazera, which is we have the rutile there, and we're doing everything in the titanium space to become the global leader for supplying rutile into the titanium industry. We also have the graphite there, so we're working, talking to off-takers, end users, battery makers, the whole gamut of the EV world and the batteries world as well. So even though we're one theme with one asset, where we're almost playing in, one quarter in either of those camps. But throughout 2024, what are we doing? We're going to continue those discussions. We're going to continue moving Kazera forwards. Recently, we announced that we've hired a new graphite specialist as our chief technology officer. So we're really making moves, looking at options of putting our graphite out to downstream users. On the titanium front, look, this is a globally strategic deposit. It's going to be moved ahead. We're doing that, hand in hand with our strategic investor Rio Tinto, who, as of today, are the largest producer of titanium dioxide out there. So they know a thing or two about the market.
Well, you've all been superb ambassadors for the sector, and I hope that you're not too busy to join more focusIR forums. This is going to be, one of many that we will be hosting in terms of themes, which gives companies the opportunity to talk about the corporate specifics as well. But I certainly feel upbeat. I just want to thank you all. Sapan Ghai, Chief Commercial Officer of Sovereign Metals; Oliver Hasler, Chief Executive of PIX Resources; Dennis Edmonds, the Chief Executive of Kazera Global; and of course Ryan Long, Managing Director of Mining and Metals Research Corporation. And look out for his Junior Mining Insights newsletter. Thank you very much to you all. Thank you.